I saw some Tesla stock investors be really excited and say that Tesla has just announced exactly how big the battery packs are going to be in the next generation vehicle as well as the Cybertruck. And if you look at the Model 3 battery pack here, you will think that it will have a 50% bigger battery than the next generation vehicle, roughly, and that the Cybertruck would have basically the same size battery as the Model S and X have. I don't think that's the case. Looking at this Master Plan 3 white paper that Tesla has just released, if you look right here, this is the global fleet, and I don't think Tesla is going to sell 24 million Model 3s and Ys, as well as 9 million Model S's, X's, and Cybertrucks put together. I really don't think Tesla would sell 3 million semis per year. These are global numbers, and these battery packs are just assumptions what the average is going to be for everyone, not just for Tesla specifically. Tesla may have better numbers, and we hope Tesla actually is going to have better numbers. Although, specifically for the Cybertruck, 100 kilowatt hours, yeah, I think that sounds a little low. If you are still not convinced that these are not specifically Tesla numbers, read this right here. Based on pack size assumptions, the vehicle fleet will require 112 terawatt hours of batteries. This is based on the global fleet, not Tesla vehicles. Another thing that I saw many people get excited about was the bus. It says to be determined. And this perhaps could be an indication that Tesla is going to launch a bus. And maybe this is the first hint, but we know that Elon Musk has talked about this many times before, saying we don't know if we actually will need buses once we solve full self-driving, because we will have robotaxis taking you exactly to where you need to go, and it will be at a very cheap price. Or maybe we would have mini buses that would still have quite a few people, but maybe you don't need a bus that big then. So it's not very clear to me that this is actually an announcement from Tesla. To me, this just means it remains to be determined if Tesla is actually going to make a bus. It is not clear. Looking at Tesla's lineup in this paper, we can clearly see we are going to have some sort of a minivan or a Mercedes Sprinter type of van, and then definitely a smaller vehicle as well, but there's no bus in here. And now let's go through other interesting things in the Master Plan 3 white paper. The cost to transition to sustainable energy is surprisingly low. If we just look at the 20 years of investment in fossil fuels, just at 2022 levels, if we just continue at that rate, actually, we would have to spend more money in the next 20 years than if we just transition to sustainable energy. Because, for example, you cannot recycle gasoline that you already use, but you can recycle batteries, which is why we would actually have less mining eventually. But how much is $10 trillion? Actually, when we look at the whole economy of the world, it's not that much. If we assume that we do this in 20 years, that would be less than 1% of last year's GDP. To be more precise, if we divide that across 20 years, it would be 0.5%. This illustrates how inefficient our current economy is. We take all of this energy from fossil fuels, and this is how much heat we produce. All of this, most of it, could actually be put to actual use if we transition to sustainable energy. For example, we transition from gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles, which use energy much more efficiently. And this is very fascinating. Tesla calculated exactly how much of Earth's land we would need to cover in solar panels and how much we would need to assign to wind farms. And the green dot is for solar, the blue one is for wind energy generation. And as you can see, you can barely even see these dots. And when I looked at this first, I was like, huh? This must be just for example purposes only, because I don't think I see any dots in other places because my screen was pretty small when I was looking at this. And then I was like, oh, there are other dots. I think I see one here. I see one tiny one in Europe. Is there one in South America? I can't really see right now. Oh, yeah, I think there is. And in Africa, I think I see some dust on my screen. I think it's this one. Yeah, I will need to clean my screen after this. Solar panels would only cover 0.19% of the world's total land area, and wind farms would only take 0.02% of the total land area. And of course, especially with solar panels, you don't have to put them in one place. You can put them on top of your roof, and that can really be spread out. So we are not going to really use any useful space, and wind farms, you can also put them where you cannot farm or build a house. I don't think you can really live on the sea, can you? If you have a boat, maybe, but then you can just simply move your boat a little bit. The point is, this doesn't take any useful land from us. And this is quite interesting. To provide reliable year-round power, it is economically optimal to deploy excess solar and wind capacity, which leads to curtailment. Curtailment will happen when 1. Solar and or wind generation is higher than the electricity demand in a region, 2. Storage is full, and 3. There is no available transmission capacity to transmit the excess generation to other regions. There is an economical trade-off between building excess renewable generation capacity, building grid storage, or expanding transmission capability. That trade-off may evolve as grid storage technologies mature, but with the assumptions modeled, the optimal generation and storage portfolio resulted in a 32% curtailment. That means a third of the energy just goes to nothing, nowhere. It just disappears. I don't have a particularly great sense of smell, but when it comes to opportunities, I think my sense of smell is pretty good. And here I smell a lot of opportunities. You will have ridiculously cheap energy during certain parts of the day. Look at this chart right here. We are, of course, right now used to energy being cheaper during the night when everyone is asleep and no one wants to work or do anything useful, really. But now we will have the opposite happen because of solar panels. Our electricity is going to be cheaper probably during the day. And that is going to be very interesting to watch and see what they say here. We already have actual data, not just an assumption that it will happen. For context, curtailment already exists in markets with high renewable energy penetration. In 2020, 19% of the wind generation in Scotland was curtailed, and in 2022, 6% of solar generation in California was curtailed due to operational constraints such as thermal generators' inability to ramp down below their minimum operating level or local congestion on the transmission system. If energy storage becomes a lot cheaper, this number is probably going to be lower though. This part here I liked quite a bit. This estimates roughly how much of total world's reserves we would need to use for this transition. So about 20% of lithium total reserves we would need to mine, which to some will sound a lot, to some, not really. This is what people think happens to our global reserves, and here's what actually happened. I wouldn't say happens because I don't think this will keep happening forever. At some point, that will no longer be the case, but this is what actually happened, and I think it is likely to continue for at least quite a while. They also have a chart for the demand of raw materials. As we can see, they are going to go through a lot of demand very soon, and then it will still keep going, but once these batteries start to come back and we start recycling, the need for new raw materials is going to be quite low. And this is with the assumption that only 80% of critical materials are recovered. With time, I think we can probably improve that number. The most important thing, really, economically, it just makes sense because we will need half the energy, as most of the energy right now just goes to heat waste, and it will literally cost less money. That sounds very Tesla-like. For example, the Model 3 and the Model Y now have better suspensions, but the cost is coming down for the consumer. That white paper, by the way, has 41 pages. A lot of it is technical. I'm not going to go through all of that here on video, but feel free to do so yourself. Hopefully you don't fall asleep. And this is the Tesla stock buying opportunity explained by Elon Musk. My name is Matt Post. Just like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video, unless you read that document and fall asleep. Then maybe I'll see you tomorrow.